This is a pre-boarding announcement for your journey to the future. Please pay attention to the information display boards for important updates and changes. Attention, please prepare your boarding pass and exit through the marked gate. Please take your seat and fasten your seatbelt. You never know where you are going.
Dear friends, Mr. President, good morning. The title of our 15th YES conference, The Next Generation of Everything. It's about future. And I want to say just few words about it. When the future has not started yet, many different futures lie ahead. When it already happened, the question is, why did it happen as it did and not differently? 5 years ago, during our 10th YES conference in Yalta in Crimea, the main focus was association with European Union. Future seemed bright, signing, integration, move to the West. The reality turned out to be dark, very dark. 100 heroes died in Kyiv during the Revolution of Dignity. Many thousand victims on Donbass. Ukraine lost territorial integrity. Why did it happen in this way? Why the darkest version of the future come true? Why did we all here in Ukraine and in the West underestimate some crucial factors? The future is not kind with those who don't think about future properly. That's why today here in our conference, our focus is the future, the next generation of everything. Important example, one of the key topics today is Ukrainian political season 2018-2019 and the danger from disinformation campaign, from election meddling and fake news from outside. We must foresee these dangers. We are here in Ukraine, don't have a luxury to underestimate again. And for our Western friends, it has to be also priority, because what will happen in Ukraine in 2019 will happen in your countries in 2020. Now, I want to tell you something very important for me, something very personal. I, as many other representatives of my generation, love Ukraine very much. I want Ukraine to be a champion of the world, for the beginning, at least champion of European Union. My generation does a lot for that, but with quite some mistakes. I'm sure that the next generation of Ukrainians will do better. Not because they will not make mistakes, but because many mistakes already were made by my generation. Not because they will be better in choosing better paths, but because they will not have a choice. And not because they will love Ukraine more than my generation, but because we will love Ukraine together. Some from next generation of Ukrainians is today with us in this room. There is also conference of 100 best Ukrainian students from all main universities and 100 best Ukrainians, young Ukrainian civil servants from all regions of Ukraine. Half people in this building are from new generations. Also, today with us are the best thinkers from all the world, from different areas, to analyze next generation of everything as an opportunities and as a threat. Traditionally, for this conference, as art collector, I want to use a power of contemporary art as one of the most efficient supporter of modernization in the society. Because the greatest artists, they have capacity to foresee future better than politicians. Today, I want to ask you to look to this incredible diptych. This diptych was painted by one of the most influential, one of the greatest artists of our days, Takashi Murakami from Japan. He painted this diptych especially for Ukraine, especially for Ukrainians, and he just finished this diptych. This diptych arrived from his studio from Tokyo to Kyiv just 4 days ago. He gave title to this diptych, Ukraine, War and Peace. Look to one part of this diptych, you can see skulls on Ukrainian flag as a symbol of sacrifice, of heroism, and a price for our mistakes. And other part of this diptych, you can see smiling sunflowers on the Ukrainian flag. This is our bright future. This is Ukraine a champion. This is Ukraine which already won main fights. This is Ukraine with Crimea and Yalta. But how to get there? Don't ask artists. They can foresee the future, but the way how to get there, we have to ask politicians, scientists, business people, participants of our 15th Yalta conference. And here we have one more very efficient tool, the best in the world quartet of moderators. Today with us, Julian Tett, managing editor of Financial Times. She's first time with us. Julian, welcome on board. And also Farid Zakariyev from CNN, Steven Sacker from BBC, and Richard Haas, President of Council of Foreign Relations, who will moderate now one of our main panel with the President of Ukraine. And now, Mr. President, a few words about you. First of all, I want to say thank you very much. You accepted our invitations. This is a great honor for us, but not big surprise, Mr. President, because my team told me they counted how many times you participate. This is your 14th time in our conference. Thank you very much for this contribution. Our team prepared a very, very short video about your appearances in your different incarnations as businessman, as member of the parliament, as minister. Please take a look.
This is the 9th time when me personally participated in this event, and I can say that everything become better and better, except of the economy. Crisis is a strong motivation for people and for the politician to do the reforms. Because without the crisis, politician can be a populist and can simply sit in and doing nothing. The only problem we have is a bad governance, but we have a unique possibility to improve it. Nobody knows exactly what to do with Europe, and everybody knows what to do with Ukraine.
Maybe I'll ask Petro to answer as the Ukrainian politician. Demographic crisis. I've made my contribution. I have 3 children, so.
As a Ukrainian citizen, I really to undertake my own efforts to fight this demographic crisis to having 4 children.
We have asking the Ukrainian audience, does it support traditionally a custom union or European integration and association with Europe? Now, we have a significant change of the proportion, fortunately. Because first time in our history, more than 50% of the people support European integration. And first time in our history, less than 30% of our people support custom union. Thank you very much indeed for that, Mr. Glazer. Try to build up absolutely new access between Turkey, Ukraine, and Poland. I think if we can present it, the advantages of this form of cooperation between our 3 countries, I think that would be very interesting and very helpful.
Small remarks. As I understand, the capital of this organization has to be in Yalta, and headquartered in the Levadia Palace.
I have, sorry about that, Victor, I have this proposal in my paper. Nobody, neither in this hall, nor in the world, will strongly believe that Georgian mineral water, or Moldavian wine, or Ukrainian chocolate are really harmful for the health of the Russian consumer. This is simply not true.
Mr. President, and now I have to tell you something very frankly. Once in my life, during this conference, I was really jealous about you. Take a look.
The excellent chocolates that Ukraine produces that can be exported to many places in the world with the proper effort.
I thought, why she is talking about his chocolate, not about my pipes? But I understand, of course I am joking, but I understand, Mr. President, that probably Secretary Clinton knew that approximately in half a year you will become a president. She knows how to foresee the future results of presidential elections. I mean Ukrainian presidential elections. But very seriously talking, Mr. President, this is not coincidence that many years ago already we started our brainstorming about role of Yalta for the future of Ukraine. Because I'm sure that Ukrainian dream about Ukrainian Yalta will be one of the main pillars of Ukrainian national idea, because we will get Yalta back when Ukraine will become a champion. And I want to say last something important. Just in 4 days, Jews around the world will celebrate main Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur. And traditionally, they will say to each other, next year in Jerusalem. And I want to ask you, all participants of our conference, during the conference, with a very strong belief, to say to each other, next year in Yalta, because one day it will happen. Thank you very much. Mr. President, I wish you one more successful participation in our conference. Floor is yours. Richard, floor is yours, please. Thank you very much.
Перш за все, я хочу подякувати
First of all, I would like to thank
Пінчука, пані Олену,
Olena, Word,
ЄС
YES,
за цю фантастичну
for this
подію.
fantastic
Як
event.
змінився наш мистецький арсенал, яким футуристичним він зараз виглядає. Від входу до аудиторії, до тих, хто виступає.
the approach to the audience.
Я дякую за це стратегічне бачення майбутнього, яке сьогодні ми маємо обговорити. Я дякую за те, що ми продовжуємо традицію, яку ми встановили на минулій Ялтинській конференції. Next year in Jerusalem. And definitely next year in Yalta. We will strongly believe that
Ми
our next year we'll have in Yalta. Not some days, but next year. We should be an optimist. Я, шановні пані і панове,
Ladies and gentlemen,
дорогі співвітчизники,
dear
які
compatriots
дивляться зараз нас в прямому
who are
ефірі,
watching us
я щиро
live now,
радий вітати вас
I'm
на
happy to
Ялтинській
greet you
ювілейній зустрічі
at
з
Yalta
європейської стратегії.
meeting on the
Мені
European
здається, ми вже
strategy.
довели не один раз,
I
що це
can
найкраще
see
місце
that we
для
have
того,
proved
щоб
on numerous
обговорювати
occasions that this is the best venue to
стратегію.
discuss
І я
strategy.
з приємністю зараз
And with
бачу
great pleasure,
величезну
I can see a great many
щирих друзів
of
України.
the sincere friends, authentic friends of Ukraine. I would like to thank every one of you for your everyday unwavering support that you demonstrate as Ukraine, as far as Ukraine is concerned, so not just with words but with deeds. You walk the talk, so to speak. And I would like to thank Kersti Kaljulaid and say that the President of Estonia is a great example of personal leadership in support of Ukraine. And I am happy to greet a great friend of mine and a great friend of Ukraine, Valdis Dombrovskis. I would like to thank you for the President, for the documents on microfinancial support, €1 billion that we agreed upon at Summit of Eastern Partnership. Thank you for renewal of sanctions for 150 individuals and about 50 Russian companies. And the news that the EU Court of Justice refused to lift sanctions against the Russian companies, against the Russian banks. As we understand, that was a piece of good news for us. And I would like to say thank you to the U.S. guests. Relations between Kiev and Washington have never, I would like to emphasize, never have been like that bright and that effective as of lately. And in order to make this possible, to make this reality, we also encompass many people from the White House and on the Capitol Hill. But I would like to say a couple of words about Senator John McCain and his unique role in support of our state. He was a great friend of Ukraine. He was dedicated supporter and defender of the Western values and did everything in his power to reinforce the transatlantic unity. Recently, I came back from Washington, where we participated in a unique procedure. That was a final farewell in loving memory of the late senator. And I could not but attend. Well, God be with him. God rest his soul. Dear friends, I'm happy to see also our partners from NATO here. Our dialogue with them has long since exceeded partnership, and now we are real allies, and we have to realize this. I would like to thank the Secretary General Stoltenberg and the great friend of Ukraine, Secretary General Rasmussen. We'd like to greet you and thank you for being with us today. Dear friends, participants of the forum, a lot has been changed since last Yalta conference. But next year in Yalta is still a topical motto. After a year, we can still remember our talks of the day back then. It was an acute discussion, a hot discussion. One of the results, you remember this hot issue of creation of the anti-corruption court, high anti-corruption court, and whether we would be able to create it. I would like to use this opportunity and say that this is the 14th of September. The 15th, the deadline for applications from the candidates expires. Young, ambitious, real patriots and professionals, the ones who have failed to submit or are undecided, please make up your minds. Without you, we cannot do that. This is your role in creation of the new Ukraine. This is your vision of the future of Ukraine, the country that counters corruption very successfully. We have great reformist decisions already implemented. The law on national security of Ukraine was adopted. Why it is so important? Because at last, it opens all the legislative bases, and from Ukraine opens the door from the side of NATO. 4 years ago, when I was elected president, officers of NATO legislatively could not come to the General Staff or the Ministry of Defense for that matter. The law on cyber defense was adopted, medical reform, educational one, and also a revolutionary reformist law on privatization. And at last, the hard currency decree, I think it was signed off by Mr. Kuchma as president 25 years ago to limit the hard currency circulation. Then it was a force.
Дивимося в майбутнє і тому прийняти це рішення. Ще один рівень свободи в прямому діалогі з бізнесом, виконуючи побажання бізнесу. Коли в нас є через безвізовий режим свобода руху людей для people-to-people contact,
the meeting, and the comprehensive free trade zone, the free movement of services and capitals. And this is the civilized European country at work. The joint stock company and LTD law an LLC law was adopted. Thank you for voting for presidential proposals. Thank you, Parliament. The one-stop window at customs. You should not take crowns visiting, calling upon all the bureaucrats and sometimes the corrupt ones. It should be all transparent and open. We are progressing in the world rating of innovation. And the ProZorro became not just a symbol of anti-corruption, but it is based on cloud technologies, open code, Scrum technologies, the single portal for public funds. Utilization is open with tens of millions of documents as a in an open source. There's no barrier for the ones who want to participate, who enter these places. Electronic state services, public services at last become a symbol of our life. We had many talks about blockchains. Now we have started, at last, the process of switching of the land cadastre to blockchain technology, register of material rights, substantive rights, the national e-money, register reform of the medical care system that was supported by many of you. Has been supported by many of you. Now telemedicine is being launched in the rural areas in the country, saving lives of thousands of Ukrainian rural dwellers. And innovation and dynamics, high dynamics, are characteristic for the Ukrainian pharmaceutics as well. We are introducing innovation in education, schools, universities. Dear friends, your parents, those of you who are parents of the first-year schoolers, this is a different school. This is not just a slogan proclaiming New Ukraine. This is respect to schoolers. This is not sitting around in classes being talked at. The teachers who have been retrained respect children. Children want to be at school. Please go to the first year, the first form students, and you'll see what a new Ukrainian school, the new Ukrainian school means. IT is responsible for 3% of GDP, and it has the third position after the agribusiness and steelmaking. And so IT plus agribusiness produce agritech, a new domain, a new realm. 2 years ago, nobody would even know about such prospects. We are very happy that Ukraine, step by step, is climbing the stairs. On the one hand, the doing business rating of the World Bank, after 5 years, we climbed over 61 steps, that ratings. But during the Yalta conference, you'll hear from some Ukrainian politicians who will be making speeches. Here they will say how bad the investment climate is, but perhaps we should, to a larger extent, take the opinion of the business into account. Back in September, we launched several big investment projects. 1.5 weeks ago, in my presence, the document was signed where Norwegians invested $0.5 billion in renewables in the south of Ukraine. Also this week, a Saudi company, as a result of effective talks, and my visit to Riyadh at the end of last year, the decision was made on investments of a great amount of money into the Ukrainian agribusiness. I cannot mention any specific figures, but this is the biggest, suffices to say, investment project over all the history of newly independent Ukraine. $200 million German companies spent on Zhytomyr plant in Zhytomyr region. What that means? Big international investments believe in the future of our country, creates jobs, and this is despite the fact that the war with Russia is ongoing. And in general, the capital investments based on the results of the first 6 months, it's 26.5%. That's an incredible figure. Several biggest brands, trading brands, enter Ukraine. Ukrainian purchasing capacity has increased as a result of the reforms designed and implemented. There is a temptation to tell us that 3.6%, that's the GDP growth in the second quarter of this year. The deficit of the budget is decreased, and this is at war, at the time of war. The sovereign debt to GDP, the proportion in 2016 was more than 82%. How much is this proportion, do you think, as of the middle of this year? 63. And friends, stable and effective banking system that was functioning thanks to our effective work. Friends, but this is not the point I wanted to talk to you about.
Positive news for our media environment can be launched only with heavy artillery, as the President remarks at YES. But according to the Constitution of Ukraine, there is a clear delimitation of the responsibility. The government is responsible for social economic situation. I'm sure that tomorrow you'll have an opportunity to discuss with the Prime Minister, and he will certainly share with you more detailed information about the plans. In my remarks, I'd like to focus on our forward-looking strategy that defines all of our initiatives during these last 4 years. It is clearly aimed at shaping the future for our descendants. This is about the future, better Ukraine, which we then will transfer to the new generation, which was so brightly mentioned by Mr. Viktor Prychuk in his speech. We already have the new generation in Ukraine, which finally feels that it belongs to Europe. And actually, they are the addressees of today's forum, as I understand. Not only those who are here, but those who will view it on TV, YouTube, Internet, because we are here to discuss the strategic goals for Ukraine as part of democratic community of the states of the world, under the conditions of hybrid attacks against not only Ukraine. There are hybrid attacks against EU, against the United States. There is now the huge wave of leftist populism and rightist populism, which are taking under the conditions and transformation of EU and NATO. And sometimes we follow these events with big interest, sometimes with big concerns. But I'd like to state separately that I, as the President, and my team, and Ukraine, have no doubts concerning capability of the EU and NATO to really overcome the internal crisis and re-emerge triumphantly, being more stronger. That's the case as of 2016, when there were forecasts about destruction of the unity of the EU. I didn't have any doubts in 2017, when the populism became so popular around the EU, and I have no doubts now. Dear ladies and gentlemen, 15 years ago, when the friends of Ukraine gathered for the first time in Yalta, we were all going through labyrinth of multi-vector approach, and our Euro-Atlantic prospects were seen by the people with a very good vision of the future, those who had very optimistic strategies. What was the first subject matter at Yalta? New borders of the EU. Then, in 2004, the European Union, actually augmented by 10 more members, Poland, guided by Mr. Alexander Kwasniewski, President of Poland, other countries who had been members of Soviet bloc, and at that time the NATO also expanded. They were joined by the peoples of Baltic states and Central Europe, while we Ukrainians failed to use this window of opportunities. Unfortunately, instead, in 2003, we had a very concerning signal from Tuzla, island of Tuzla, but we did not hear it. We did not. Having all these consequences now, one of these negative consequences is that we hold Yalta Forum not in Yalta but in Kyiv. But we have firm belief next year we'll meet in Yalta. I'm confident, and I'm sure that we shall return to the southern seashore of the Crimea. And especially after we saw these videos, I keep in mind the forum as of 2013. It was not just discussion with Glaziev, a symbol of so-called Russian world. We were fighting desperately for signing the association agreement. We also literally dragged Yanukovych to Vilnius. We did not realize how tightly he was bound with Moscow. Still, back then, we were not losing our hope. We didn't realize it was not possible when we failed to prevent the worst scenarios. And the non-block status imposed on Ukraine ended up being even more effective tool than the bitterly remembered Budapest Memorandum. By the way, I would mention not only Budapest but also Bucharest. On one hand, the 2008 NATO summit adopted a cornerstone decision stating the door to the alliance shall be open for not only Georgia but also to Ukraine. But on the other hand, at that time, neither Ukraine nor Georgia were offered a membership action plan. What was that? How would it work? This was an attempt to pacify the potential aggressor. It was not the first case of this kind in European history, and it didn't work again because Russia took it as a weakness of the West and a free hand to use force against any of its neighbors. That very year, just few weeks after the summit, Russia attacked Georgia. So for all sane politicians and experts, it was evidently that the threat to Ukraine, deadly threat to Ukraine, was imminent. Looked like everything was done without us and for us. Ukraine was given up back to the empire, turned into a colony, and this European Union expanded without our participation. On the other hand, the Russian world was being formed, which was pressing Ukraine tighter and tighter. That was the reality of the divided continent, but the Bible says the wind blows where it wishes, and the Ukrainian when the spirit of democracy, of the freedom, really dominated among youth, the Ukrainian youth who were the first to show up at Maidan. The history is not made where the politicians have made all their decisions, but where their plans are broken and where the history breaks through the strong walls. This was what happened in 2014. We firmly stood on the path of European and Euro-Atlantic integration, and the guiding stars that shine upon us are the stars on the EU flag, while the compass of Ukraine is the one drawn at the NATO symbol. Our Soviet past and Russian fairy tales taught us that it was very dangerous to look back. By the way, Bible mentions that danger too. So the fight for signing the association agreement was in front of your eyes. All these peripecias of our fight against Russia for ratification of this agreement, which lasted for 3 years. You all remember Netherlands referendum, you remember attempts to make it all fail at European parliaments. You'll learn about that later on, because I have no intention to write my memories, but I can tell you for sure that this game with Russia was to our favor, and the EU agreement has become the reality. Well, we can look laughing on and all those scientists hired by Yanukovych about the potential losses in case process of signature of association agreement. Instead, the proportion of the UN export approximates between 42 to 43%, and that's largely compensates the losses caused by war, by hybrid aggression, economic blockade, and closure of markets by Russia. Within the nearest days, friends, we expect to issue 10 millionth biometric passport in Ukraine. 10 million people, 10 million have given a reply to those who try to undermine the importance of the visa-free regime, who insisted that Ukrainians were not interested in it. 10 million. But, apart from the self-explanatory figure, I remain confident that the symbolic political value of the visa-free significantly exceeds its practically applicable meaning. We are demolishing the barriers built by the Soviet Empire between us and our European neighbors. This year's NATO summit between NATO and Ukraine has confirmed Euro-Atlantic perspective of the great European nation. And this initiative to enshrine the NATO integration in the Constitution is not only a signal to our society and our firmness or our orientation. It's not just wave goodbye hand to Russia. Goodbye, my gentle bear, to return to your fiery forest. That's the words from the song of Olympic Games, Soviet times. But this is a message to our partners in the West, who told us several times that their doors are open. At the closed meeting during the summit, all the leaders of the EU stressed very firmly, Mr. President, NATO doors are open for us, but we never had doubt about that. To be honest, we certainly will use it, this opportunity, and we will certainly return back to the great family of European nations. And we are getting rid, one by one, of all those chains used by Russians as a colonist. What is going on now here? This is the decolonization. The empire is interested to hold their colonies in poverty and independence, economic, political, and all other senses. And by the way, spiritual too. And I pray, and I do whatever God has given me strength to make sure that the Orthodox Church of Ukraine gains the Thomas of autocephaly. Dear friends, you know, just recently we couldn't even dream about that, and without God's help and without assistance of all Ukrainian people, it wouldn't have been possible. Now let's look at these hysteric reactions from Moscow everywhere, Moscow TV channels, and to some statements of their representatives of Russian Orthodox Church, which are far from being proper for the priests. And actually, the issue of Thomas goes far beyond the ecclesiastic dimension, because the unified church is not a threat of a conflict, as some try to present it. No, we will never let it happen. The unified Orthodox Church is the guarantee of the common consent. That's the guarantee of our spiritual independence on Moscow, which unfortunately still have this wrong vision, as if they still have their canonic territory. And actually, this illusion of Moscow have been destroyed by last decisions. And Ukrainians of all around the world will also receive their own church. And that's another important characteristic or feature. Here we can see the full destruction of the concept of the Third Rome. That's probably the oldest claim of Moscow for the leading role in global religious life. We have different understanding with Russians about the Orthodox belief. That's why we will take different way from Russia. For them, the church is kind of a guarantee of authoritarian regime. But we, as the largest European Orthodox state, demonstrate the coexistence between the Christianism and the democracy. And more broadly, we should look at our European and Euro-Atlantic aspirations. It's not only that we need the UN to the same extent they need us as well. Not only NATO shall provide us with the security guarantees, but we shall, with our new armed forces, which most of you could see during the military parade, what it will be 7th anniversary of our independence, we will certainly reinforce the NATO Eastern flank. And I can say separately that we are not moving to alliance with empty hands. Yes, we are thankful for the solidarity after renovation of our armed forces. We were defending at our own the borders of our country. We are offering to the alliance the strongest army in the European continent. And maybe I will not be diplomatic, but we have our experience how you can defend against Russians and how you can beat them. Well, Ukraine has huge potential, human potential. We demonstrated that several times. And Ukraine is a Euro-optimistic country with a unique trust in Europe. As far as the EU is concerned, I'd like to strengthen that this large historic project can be fully completed only if it encompasses Ukraine. Why? Because not the Ural, but our northern eastern border is a boundary of the modern European civilization. Ukrainian border, not Urals. Why? Let's recall the last week TV footage from Russian Federation. Police were slamming kids all around the country. A leader of the parliamentary faction was beating protesters, threatening them to put them in jail for years. A leader of one of the biggest law enforcement agencies threatens to beat the hell out of one of the leaders of the opposition. These deep political and cultural differences are yet another reason why we should clearly draw the borders with the empire to get out of the area of Russia's sphere of influence. In this historical process, indeed, we are behind our neighbors. So far, we have not yet put the end to our post-colonial status, and the irreversible victory in this fight would be our integration with the European Union and NATO. I'm not a big dreamer. To some extent, I understand very clearly we have to go a long way to achieve this goal. It would be a mistake to try to give a date when that will happen. To have the war, resistance of the forces from the past make us adjust our strategy, but they never have had any impact over its content. Yes, we did some mistakes tactically, and I partially have to share the liability for these mistakes, but I know for sure that we never deviated from our main strategic course. We have the right strategy, and the strategy has no alternative. And we altogether have now to do much more than we have already done. Of course, the state relying solely on foreign assistance cannot be successful, and every day we pay more attention to our Ukrainian strength, and after overcoming the economic crisis, we stand on our own feet more firmly. In theory, we could refrain from external financing if we were not to repay all the debts. Those who criticize us for cooperation with the International Monetary Fund, by the way, I was pleased to hear that it was a statement of IMF that this Ukraine is one of the most successful during the old times of Ukrainian independence, and Ukraine now is a success story at the emerging markets. But those who actually blame us of this cooperation tend to forget that from 2007 to 2010 the state debt increased by 26.5 billion USD. Others still forgot that from 10 to 2014 it increased by another 20 million USD. And we have to repay all that, and next year is a peak for the amount to be repaid. But I want to stress those who predicted the default of Ukraine in 2014-15 failed with the forecasts, will fail with their forecasts again. We know what we're doing, and we will be able to defend Ukraine financially too. Dear ladies and gentlemen, future of Ukraine depends largely, if not decisively, on the election cycle of 2019-2020. And of course, I, as a president, I guarantee free, fair, and democratic elections of the head of the state, elections of the new parliament, and the local self-governments. We will defend the free will of the citizens, and this process has to be in line with our European strategy and to demonstrate again the leadership of Ukraine at the post-Soviet space. But, well, in the context of foreign aggression, we actually decided not to declare the state of war. That was my position of principle, but we certainly could expect that the war will impact the features of this electoral campaign. Unfortunately, on the Ukrainian political chessboard, there are pieces that allow themselves to be played by Moscow. Actually, we could see it clearly, and we now have a very exact vision of the Kremlin's plans, and we know who they want to become the participant of the second round of presidential elections. Thanks God that's not my name, I mean the Kremlin plans. We know that they are dreaming of using the so-called fifth column to form a strong pro-Russian opposition in the EU Parliament, and if in luck, to make it part of new coalition capable of vetoing Ukraine's European and Euro-Atlantic integration. They are trying to really form some local authorities favorable to Moscow. The essence of what is going on could be described as a threat of revanchism and revision of Ukraine's European strategy and return of Ukraine to the imperial stable. This could not be exaggerated, but I am absolutely confident that pro-European aspirations of Ukraine are absolutely evident. Still, the threat should not be underestimated. Our enemy is proficient in all sorts of hybrid information warfare. It would be easier to counter the Russian propaganda if some of their points would not be supported in their dissemination by some Ukrainian narratives. Well, it's ridiculous, cynical and detestable when Ukrainian politicians advocate for Putin by shifting the responsibility for the war from Russia to Ukraine. The Russian meddling is not in electoral process is not solely Ukrainians' problem, as this used to be 20 years ago. The Kremlin's crusade against democracy has become a hybrid war at a global scale, and it's very good that we can coordinate our efforts with our Western partners to put in place a reliable mechanism for preventing foreign interference in with electoral processes. And the best way to protect the free world is, to protect the whole free world is to protect Ukraine. And I'm really grateful to Jared Cohen, with whom I yesterday had a fantastic conversation. I was really impressed. I'm very thankful to him for his axiomatic word. And it was him who said that. And it's very important that the discussion on this subject matter is scheduled for today. Last Saturday, the government of Denmark introduced a plan for countering Russian meddling in the electoral process. President Macron put it straight that Putin wants to dismantle the European Union. President Trump signed an executive order providing for sanctions for any attempts to meddle in the elections. Some of us get upset with the fact that our sanctions for occupation of Crimea, Donbass, are not that tough, and we certainly continually have to coordinate our reactions with reactions of foreign partners like chemical attack at Salisbury, but and compare it to the situation in Crimea, it's not comparable, because we almost have no Ukrainian citizens over there. But what matters is that sanctions against Moscow are now related not only with Ukraine, which demonstrates the understanding of the whole world that now Ukraine has become a threat not only for Ukraine, but for the whole democratic, civilized world, which wants to use the diplomatic rules to achieve the goals of hybrid war. And politicians who call for lifting the sanctions are acting not only against Ukraine, but against the whole democratic community. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I know from my own experience how important it is to be careful and responsible about the promises you make. 4 years ago, I said that anti-terrorist operation would last hours, not months. I regret setting such high expectations. A few weeks ago, I apologized for giving a hope which did not come true, for promising something that did not happen. I apologized for that. But I would like this story to become an example not only for me, but for all politicians. I urge to fight with realistic programs, not waiting for some wonders to happen, that the rivers will flow with milk and honey. I urge not to destroy our country, not to destroy it through populism, and to simply assess the unprecedented complexity of the challenges that Ukraine is facing, because we are now following our own way from point A, as Mykola Khvylevy called it, away from Moscow, to point B, called Let There Be Europe. This expression is quite unusual for us today, but it was widely used in the Ukraine in the 20th of the 20th century. We must respond to all risk and threat by making a responsible choice when we elect not only the president but also the new parliament, and that will be the best opportunity to reaffirm the invariability of the pro-European and independent course of our state. I'm confident this is what is going to happen, and we will come to witness this when we'll meet in 2019 and 20. I see my role in making sure that through the power of law and the power of conviction, those who could question our own path of independent European, Euro-Atlantic integration, the Ukrainian path of Euro-Atlantic integration would not stand a chance. Europe is also facing a choice. This choice is both simple and difficult. We have a country, Europe has now a country knocking at their door whose dream is not to be the part of European community, the country that has made its decisions. The European Union now needs to make their decisions as well. The fog of war is still present over this part of Europe, but as it is wearing away, Ukraine will clearly can and will become the new success story, bring new space for growing Europe. For that, we need to have courage. We need to have our own vision of the future. I think today this vision will be discussed, and tomorrow. What do they call in English? This is the word vision. I want everybody to see that we have this vision. I know that there is no more convicting argument in favor of the European Union than success. Success is our part of the path and of responsibility. If you look at numbers of our economic growth and the companies entering Ukrainian market, we're following this way. We're going along that path. But if you listen to the voice of the peoples, it becomes obvious that we are not moving with sufficient space. So there is no need to turn the steering wheel. We need to shift gears and to increase the speed so that we will transfer to the next generation of Ukrainians successful European countries. The most important was not to make mistakes during the elections of the next year. But as I actually saw many times, that Ukrainian people are wise. Glory to Ukraine.
Mr. President, thank you for those comprehensive remarks. Thank you as well for your thoughtful words about Senator McCain. All of us from the United States appreciate that. Victor, thank you for making this extraordinary gathering again possible, and for all you do to foster this important conversation. It's interesting, both of you referred to the Jewish saying next year in Jerusalem. I hope for your sake that your wait is not as long. We were together a year ago, sir, and listening to your remarks, much has changed, but much has stayed the same. A lot of reform efforts have been passed in this country, but on the security side, Russia is still ensconced in Crimea. The war continues in the east. Corruption is still extensive. So let me ask a few questions, and then I'll open it up. We're going to run a few minutes over. So your coffee will be ready, but you're going to have to wait. As you said, the period for judges applying to the court essentially now is closed. What is it that you believe the next president, be it you or whomever, what does the next president of Ukraine need to do to see that this court succeeds and to see that corruption becomes less extensive?
First of all, I'm very proud to launch judicial reform, constitutional reform. And I thank to the Parliament for support my proposal for the constitution changes, because that was complete reload of the whole judicial system which don't have a trust for Ukrainian people. And what I said when I create the new court system, first, this court should be independent. Independent from the president, independent from the government, independent from the parliament. At the same time, we lift the immunity of the judges, because the court judges should have a responsibility. We remove the mechanism when the parliament appoints the judges. And within a few weeks, the president do not have a right to appoint the judges. This is the guarantee of the independence of the new anti-corruption court. Second, we do our best to have a fresh blood in the anti-corruption court. Not only the caste for families and generation of judges have a right to be a member of the anti-corruption court. The new lawyers, the new scientists have a unique opportunity to prove that Ukraine has an ability to build up an effective anti-corruption court. And another thing, the very important role of the reputable foreign experts who participate in the procedure. This is a unique, we don't have any analogies nowhere in the world that we have such a transparent, such an efficient position for appointing the court. And what is my purposes? Not as a president, but as a citizen of Ukraine. I want to have a corruptionist in prison. Not blah, blah, blah on TV show. Definitely not. While they are not in prison, please stop talking about that. But everybody should be absolutely sure that the punishment for the corruption is absolutely unavoidable. That's why I do my best to create independent anti-corruption infrastructure. That's why I do my best to create, together with my team, with Parliament, with government, to create an electronic declaration, which will not exist in nowhere in the world. That's why we do our best to give a full independence to this infrastructure, and I am absolutely confident that the reform will bring the results very soon.
Thank you. Let me ask the question on the security side, in particular about the Minsk process, two issues. One is, what is it that you believe needs to be done on the peacekeeping side? What kind of a force would you support coming into being on Ukrainian territory? And secondly, what are you prepared to do in the way of offering a degree of political autonomy for the people who live in those regions?
Point number one. For the whole of my life, I will remember the night on the 12th of February, year 2015, when we have a 19 hours long negotiation without a single minute to break. And the President of France, then President of France, François Hollande, very accurate described the atmosphere which happened in this night in Minsk. And we created documents, very important documents, when we have what is the obligation of every side. Russia should withdraw all their troops from the occupied Ukrainian territory. Russia should withdraw all tank and artillery system, all the heavy weapons, and disarmed illegal armed formation. Russia should create security precondition for launching the political process. By the way, we never talk about the political autonomy. We never talk about federalization, like somebody want to present it. No. Ukraine is a unitary state, and never accept the foreign pressure for changing structure of our country. This is not Russia, not in Moscow. The same, not in Brussels, not in Washington, will decide what would be the Ukraine. This is the sovereign right of Ukrainian people. But we promise to provide free and fair local election with the rights for the local community, which language to speak, which monument to stand, and strong and effective coordination with the central power. And we promise we are ready immediately to launch the process of local election when would be security precondition. Long 4 years we're waiting for the security precondition from Russia. No tiny step for the implementing Minsk from Russia, even more. Now we have new discussion about illegal fake election on the occupied territory. How can anybody imagine the election under the barrel of the Russian machine gun, when we have more than 45,000 of Russian troops and Russian messengers? Is it a free and fair election? Does anybody can imagine that in their life? And this is the Russian responsibility, absolutely Russian symbolic step. The declaration of the fake election is completely ignoring Minsk. And the only way how we can stop this Russia ignoring is a decision of the Security Council of the United Nations for the implementation, the mission of the peacekeeping. The very next day when we appeared, the international peacekeepers on the occupied territory, the very next day Russia withdrew their troops. The very next day the illegal armed formation would be disarmed. And the very next day we would be ready to launch a political process, very simple. But nobody trusts Russia. And peacekeepers, this is another argument, how to build up the model, which we cannot count on Russian word. What we need for that? Unity. Unity of the whole world. And solidarity with Ukraine. This is definitely.
Mr. President, I'll ask you one more question, then I'll open it up. So much of your talk today, so much of this conference is about integrating Ukraine with Europe. But when you began that process 15 years ago, this conference, Europe looked very different than it looks today. Suddenly we have Brexit on the horizon. The Merkel government is structurally weak. The countries of Eastern Europe are illiberal at best. So the entire European project is really not advancing right now. The real question is, can we avoid it going backwards? Does Ukraine need to rethink the importance of Europe in Ukraine's future?
Ukrainian people are very widely informed about all the situation in the European Union. And the results of the opinion poll we have now is evidence in that about or even more than 70% of Ukrainians strongly support this European Union. They're ready to fight for European Union. And they're ready to implement the precondition for Ukrainian membership. This is to transform Ukraine to the country of success. And I do my best to bring the peace in my country. But peace means no capitulation. Peace means renew and restore territorial integrity in Ukraine, on the east of our country. And please don't forget, and I see Rifat Chubarov, who is sitting in this hall, the chairman of the Crimean Tatar Mejlis, and restore our territorial integrity with the Crimea. We all the time remember about that. And that is the Ukrainian understanding of peace, and this is the global understanding of peace, respecting the territorial integrity, respecting sovereignty, respecting international law. And Russia is already paying a huge price for their aventure. That's why Ukraine is a nation for Euro-optimists. Maybe one of the most European optimistic nations in European Union. And I think that European Union now need more European optimists, definitely. We consider Brexit as our own defeat. We keep our fingers crossed during voting in Brexit. And we are absolutely confident that one day, better soon, Ukraine would be member of European Union and member of NATO. And I'm absolutely confident that the next parliamentary week, Parliament will vote first, voting for the constitutional changes. I would be very much happy if the number of votes of the Parliament would be big enough just to demonstrate how important this process is for Ukrainian people, for Ukrainian respect to the Parliament, for Ukrainian government, and for Ukrainian president.
Thank you. I got time for just 2 questions. I apologize. Carl Bildt, I wanted to give you the first opportunity. It's in the second row over there to get you a microphone.
Yeah, briefly, Mr. President, you covered a lot of issues. One you didn't cover at all, and that was energy security. Because one of the problems of Ukraine in the past has been dependence on import, and I would also add dependent upon transfer money. You need to stand on your own feet together with partners. Some comments on that.
I want to thank Carl Bildt because he was the first foreign minister with whom I met when I was elected as a foreign minister of Ukraine. And one of the first visits was in Sweden. And since this meeting, he was a strong friend of Ukraine. Carl, I want to thank you for the many years support of my country. And you're absolutely right. Energy security is a key issue for us. And energy hook was the very strong influence on all previous presidents and governments. And only our team, together with the parliament and with the government, with the 2 prime ministers, we go to the Stockholm court. And the Stockholm court, which has a very high reputation, make a very important decision for us, that the contract, which was signed in the year 2009, was harmful for Ukraine. And Russia should pay for us $4.6 billion. By the way, yesterday Russia made a statement that they do not fully recognize the Stockholm court decision and would try to appeal that, I don't know where. But this is the demonstration for the reliability of Russia as a supplier of the natural gas, because all European contract based on the Stockholm arbitrage. And if we, when we win the court, cannot receive the money and decision, how anybody can trust Russia in the energy sector? What we do? We decrease the consumption for 30% because of our energy efficiency cooperation, including cooperation with Sweden. Because you, Carl, launched the Eastern Partnership together with the other nation. And one of the main purposes was not only political integration, but also the energy efficiency. We now make energy market absolutely transparent, which is not happening throughout all the history of Ukraine. We fight the corruption in this sphere and do our best to attract investors in this very important sphere. And we just declare that Nord Stream 2 is just a politically motivated project. They have a zero economic sense. Ukraine easily can transit through Ukrainian territory the whole capacity of the Nord Stream 2 without one single penny of the investment. And Russia has only political purposes for pushing to build up Nord Stream 2 for 2 purposes. To make Europe, to make European Union more dependent from Russian gas, not switch it to the normal market instrument, to remain an instrument for the political pressure, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole Europe. And I am confident, and I am happy that yesterday the United States also made a statement that they have a sanction against Nord Stream on the table. And we are inviting the European companies to cooperate together with us on Ukrainian transit. And I hope, Carl, that within 5-6 years, we do our best to be energy independent. But just for your information, the revenue we receive from the gas transit is exactly money we spend for our security and defense sector. This is another reason why Russia insists on the Nord Stream 2. And only unity and solidarity. And we count on Sweden. We count on Denmark. We have a strong support from Poland and from the Baltic states. And we pray to keep Europe together. because this is another project of Russia to divide Europe. Please, stay strong, stay united. Thank you.
I'm afraid we've only got time for one more question. If we're up to me, we would go on, but I'm just the president of a small organization, not of a country, so I can't control these things. Ambassador Vershbow, I see you've got your hand up.
Thanks very much. Mr. President, thank you for your optimistic vision, and congratulations on the growing public support for EU and NATO integration. But that growing support is going to make the Russians even more motivated to interfere aggressively in next year's Ukrainian elections, even more so perhaps than they did in 2004 when they sort of previewed all the things they're doing now. What more can the West do to help you prevent and counter this interference? You spoke a lot about sanctions, which is more about punishment after the fact. But what can Western governments, NGOs, and social media companies do to help you prevent the Russians from being effective in their interference?
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I think that with that connection, I want to once again mention my yesterday meeting with Jared Cohen. I was surprised that he has absolutely clear structure what to do. And I fully support this idea. The place of our Western partners and strategic friends are now here in Ukraine, and we should be together to work different strategies and different steps, starting from the cybersecurity and finishing with the big disinformation campaign which Russia launched not only in Ukraine, using the social media, using the TV channel. We're not talking about the freedom of media. We should protect that. But we should not give the opportunity to use Russia, the democratic instrument. And we would be very much welcome our advisors from the United States, from European Union, to prepare together to protect our country against Russian hybrid war. Again, this is not the problem of only Ukraine. This is the problem of United States. This is the problem of France, the problem of Germany, the problem of European Union, the problem of the global democracy. Let's be effective to protect our values. This is our top priority now. Thank you.
Mr. President, I want to thank you. I will resist the temptation to ask why you missed one of the 15 annual meetings and what you were doing that was more important. But again, I want to thank you for being here today and wish you good luck. And because rumor has it, there's one or two things coming up next year. But thank you very much.
This is Victor said that I missed one because I don't remember that I miss anyone. Maybe I was just not have a speech for one of the conference. But definitely I have a feeling that I am together with YES for all 15 years. The friends of mine are in the council. Victor do a great job. Elena, thank you. My team is effectively cooperating with Yalta because this is important thing. President Kwasniewski, President Kuchma. By the way, another person who helped me a lot for prepare today, Mr. Konstantin Yeliseyev, Deputy Chairman of Presidential Administration, and he has a birthday today. Happy birthday, Konstantin.